I made giant foam hands. Why? Because they're ridiculous, and ridiculous is fun. This week I'm doing something called foam smithing. It's something I haven't done before, and if you want to learn more about how to do it, check in with the people who taught me just about everything I know about it. That's Bill and Brittany Duran over at Punish Props Academy. When I decided I wanted to make giant foam hands, I started out by photocopying my hands at 200%. If you want to weird people out, go into a Staples store, pay money to put your hand on a photocopier. When I got it home, I cut it out. I actually patched on a thumb there because it didn't quite get it lined up correctly. I used spray adhesive to mount that cutout paper to a piece of cardboard so I'd have a more durable final pattern. Then I went around and cut that out. This is going to be a recurring theme in this build. Lots of cutting, lots of tracing and laying things out. I then transferred that cardboard pattern with the help of a Sharpie to pieces of floor mat. I just picked these up at Harbor Freight. You can get these in bundles for fairly cheap. There's going to be a lot of tracing and a lot of cutting in this, and one of the things you'll see me do is sharpen my disposable razor blade with a kitchen knife sharpener, and that's really important. It makes a big difference to keep that blade as sharp as you can. You could replace the blade, but really you'd be doing that after about every cut because it really needs to be super sharp. One of the ways you'll know that it's sharp is that it's slicing through the foam and not tearing it as it cuts. After a lot of cutting, I have 4 lefts and 4 rights. These will be sandwiched together. What I'm trying to figure out is the center. I want my hand to be able to go in there. So I need a pocket of some kind, and I'm wondering if it's not thick enough on this back part. The fingers are probably thick enough. The back, I think I may sandwich in another layer in here so I have plenty of room for my hand. So maybe cut 2 more half hands that I can kind of feather in the middle of these. I think that'll work. Once I got everything laid out, I wound up with a lot of cut up hand-shaped pieces here and lots of scrap. I won't throw these away. I'll save these to try to do something else with them eventually. One of the next steps is to use my belt sander to take off the texture on the floor mat. You want to get a good bond between these as we're gluing them together a little bit later, and to do that you need to take off that textured surface. I also feathered down those half hands to a very narrow tip that allowed me to push everything together and get a nice clean glue bond. Now it was time to start layering them together. I coat each piece with barge cement. Let it dry until it's tacky and then just press these pieces together. Contact cement, like barge, sticks to itself, but you have to let it tack up a little bit first. I have 2.5 layers on each hand, and I have 2 more layers to go. I have 2 full pieces here, and then that half piece in the middle. I have to cut handholds out of these, so there'll be a pocket kind of in here where my hands will go, and then there'll be another layer on this side and another layer on this side of each one. A total of 4.5 layers, and these are already pretty stiff. I'm digging what I've got so far. I think it's going to be pretty cool by the time it's done. And again, more cutting, more gluing until we get to the final thickness of foam.
Mark on my nose from the respirator.
They're partially done. Oh my God! I have to clean up around the edges and then begin to shape them. I think I will heat form the backs here so that they have a little bit easier time going on my hands. Really, this makes a huge mess, and I made sure to wear a respirator and eye protection while I was doing this, taking them back to the belt sander and getting all of the edges cleaned up. Those cuts are not all that smooth, but putting them on the belt sander gets everything nice and clean. And it does look a lot nicer, but it's not sculpted. It's not really finger-shaped. It's very square and blocky at this point. So I used an abrasive disc on an angle grinder to really start carving away a lot of foam. It's easy for this to get away from you, though, so you really want to take your time and work very carefully. Be very gentle with the amount of pressure you put on this, or you can really burn through the foam. I also followed up with rasps and files to try to refine the shape and smooth it out even more. I kind of messed up here. One of the things I should have done is go back over this with latex caulk to fill in any gaps and really smooth this out. It would have come out as a much nicer finished product. Then I went back with a grinding stone on my rotary tool. I did a pretty good job of grinding in some deeper details like creases in the palms and the fingers. That helps give this a more natural looking shape. This trick is another one that I picked up from Bill and Brittany over at Punish Props. Cut a shallow groove with your razor knife for things like fingernails and the wrinkles on the back of your knuckles, small details. And then when you hit them with a heat gun, the foam shrinks and those little slices really open up. I went over the entire surface of the foam with the heat gun to close up those open pores on the foam. It'll really make a difference when it comes to finishing this. I covered everything with Plastidip, and I went with the gray Plastidip thinking that it would be easier to spray paint later, but what I found out putting gray on the gray foam really made it difficult to figure out where I'd covered everything. I would probably go with a white or even a black Plastidip to help you in this stage. From everything I've seen, the Plastidip bonds much nicer to the foam and creates a good barrier between the foam and the spray paint, keeps things flexible and gives you a better finished product with the spray paint later. After that dried, I hit it with a spray paint color I found called Sunrise by Krylon. It kind of mimics that weird plastic tone of the tiny little rubber hands. When it dried, I decided to tone it down some and give it a more natural look to it. I went over the hands with a wash of craft paints that I watered down. I gave some variation to the paint color, and it really toned down the harshness of the spray paint. It helped the details pop more by putting a little bit of grime in some of the creases. The trick is paint it on and wipe it off. You'll have a little bit left over, just a little bit of that paint residue, really, that will help make this a little bit more natural. It's tough to see the effects of this on camera, but the left one is weathered with that wash of brown paint, and the right one is not. It really did make a big deal in person, though. The final step was to put a coat of clear spray acrylic over the whole thing. It's a matte finish, so it gives everything a nice, consistent finish and seals in all the paint and all the hard work we put in. One of the unintended side effects that really helped out, when I was painting these, I stuck them down on a can of spray paint to give them some way to stand up, and what that did is it actually helped pucker out the foam and make it a lot easier for me to slip my hand inside. There's not a really good reason to have these other than just to be ridiculous with them. I wanted to make a big version of the tiny little hands that I've seen guys like Jimmy DiResta play with, and they have a bunch of fun with them. So I don't know what I'm going to do with these, but that's kind of what I like to do. I like to do stuff that's a little bit silly and ridiculous sometimes because it keeps me interested. I get to play and maybe develop some new skills that I otherwise wouldn't have. I'm the king of high fives now.